Hey guys, and welcome back to Talking with Shadows, the conversation everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here your host, Vic Whaley.
And Marcus D.
And today we're going to be talking about barking aliens and getting busy on an intergalactic level.
But first, let's give our tip of how to not get black bagged.
Okay, today's black bag tip is strip down naked, cover yourself with grease. Let them try to wrestle you. Run around, scream. By the time they get a hold of you, you've drawn the attention of other people, and they're probably calling the cops because, well, there's a naked greased up guy running around.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all the stuff with the paranormal that we do all day long, and you talk about some of the stuff that we tend to talk to, you got to think about this kind of stuff, guys. You got to think, how do we not get black bagged by the government?
Also, Happy New Year's, you guys. I'm sure it's not New Year's whenever this is going up, but it is New Year's Eve right now.
Yeah, it's whenever we're recording. So we hope you guys have a good New Year's, and we hope that you guys get your New Year's resolutions ready for this year. Vic, what's your New Year's resolution?
Oh, goodness. Get back on my diet, probably.
He needs to. I'm telling you.
You're one to talk.
First of all, I am one to talk. I know.
And you carry all your fat in your head too. It's like it's weird. His body's not bad, but like it's all up in his face.
It's like an orange on a toothpick. I can't even. Like, I had to get our boom mic though, by the way, to keep it from vibrating with how much Vic like actually shakes the house whenever he actually like walks around and talks.
Bruh, bruh, bruh.
But we hope you guys are having a good New Year's, and we're really, really happy. Sorry we couldn't get an episode out to you guys earlier with the holidays and all that, but we're back in the studio now to put out some content for you guys. And today we thought it would be really cool to get into some topics on UFOs and aliens. I don't think that we've done that quite a lot so far in the podcast.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. So we thought this would be super cool, and we wanted to talk about an alien abduction story. But before we fully get into that, I have to talk to you guys about this really cool article that I came across before this episode. I was just scrolling through some news articles, and I saw this cool article that was talking about NASA buying semi-automatic assault rifles.
Wait, are you just now catching on to that? Because like I think that article's from like June.
I don't know why I didn't see this before. I'm like, in some of this stuff, and I'm like, this is so weird. Why is NASA buying assault rifles?
Yeah, I think they're specialized AR-15s.
Is this something for like the Space Force that's coming on right now here in the U.S.?
If I was going to take a guess, it might be for special defense. I'm not an expert on how assault rifles work in space, but I'm going to guess the answer is not great.
I can't imagine that would be an effective tool like up in space. I think even when the Russians designed their own like guns that they use, like they were like a special like pistol that they were using up there.
Like think about what the kickback would be like. You shoot it like once and you're floating away.
Just forever floating through space after you find your gun, whatever you thought you saw up in space.
I can also see this causing like an intergalactic incident. Like, you fire off some bullets and then 8,000 years later they collide with someone on another planet.
And finally hit somebody. Because if you fire like a bullet in space, it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep going.
But I guess they'd have to have like a thin atmosphere because I guess like any like shell you shoot would just like burn up in an atmosphere or something.
Oh gosh.
But watch like the metal be made out be poisonous there or something.
We're driving around in space and that's like something you gotta watch out for in space. It's like, look, bullets.
Intergalactic drive-by.
You're walking through like a whole like cloud of bullets and they're like, all right, turn on your bullet wipers. Let's.
So what do you think they're actually using them for?
It's weird when I looked into this. I found out that NASA actually has like private security forces. Like they actually have like a private security contract force that like watches most of their bases. And I thought that was kind of weird that the United States government uses private security rather than like soldiers.
Do you think it's a bottom line thing, or do you think it's to like keep shady stuff secret?
Probably both. I think I think NASA is a company that has to think about like the bottom dollar, like probably more than most more than most companies. So I think some is probably for that.
Like, don't they have their like own personal like hostage negotiators too? Just
Yes,
like
they
assigned to NASA.
That's weird. It's they have their own like SWAT team too, like their own rapid response team. And can you think of any real incidences that would that spark this?
I can't think of any, but I can imagine why they might want that. Like, so if, a foreign agency kidnaps a NASA scientist, they don't have to wait for a hostage negotiator to get there. They can just kind of jump right in. Also, they'd probably be familiar with the people who work there and stuff.
But it's all privatized. Like, it's all privatized.
Oh, let me throw out a different possibility. What if someone kidnaps them and then the hostage negotiator is specialized at making sure, like, they don't spill things, or that if they're going to, they screw it up enough that they get killed before it happens.
But I would think that still the United States government, when how much that they want to keep some stuff secret, that they would have just their own special teams dedicated to stuff like this. I mean, that has to be at the forefront of their mind.
I'm thinking, as far as the guns go, I don't think that they're using it for anything up in space or anything like that. It'd have to be like for the defense of their area, but like what are they so worried about defending against that they need like a bunch of AR-15s? Also, I did look up the specs on the AR-15, and a fun fact, and I think they're trying to teach us something here. The clips on the guns are painted flat black earth.
Bum bum bum.
So therefore confirmed, Earth is flat.
That's right. Earth is flat. The sun is a lie.
Yeah. Earth is flat. The sun's a lie. Read more magazines. That must be what they're going for.
That's NASA secretly trying to tell us that the Earth is flat.
So what are they worried about? Are they worried about like maybe a terrorist attack? You think?
I think it's probably up. It's like a lot of companies. They're updating their security teams in order to be able to respond to probably major crises like this.
Don't they already have outside firms taking care of that?
Again, that's why I just find this odd. I mean, again, it's a department of like the government. They should have their own people internally to handle this sort of thing.
Also, didn't their budget just get cut earlier this year too?
Mm-hmm.
So their budget's getting cut, but they're still thinking, you know what? We need a bunch of AR-15s, even though we're running on a shoestring budget. Yeah. I don't know, like. Maybe they're expecting some sort of terrestrial-based threat. Maybe the aliens from Dulce are finally burrowing their way to Houston, and they're going to pop up, and they're going to get them. They're going to get them, Marcus.
And they have to be prepared for when these things pop out.
Like, truthfully, I don't have a solid answer on why they need a whole bunch of AR-15s.
Neither.
But it's something to chew on. If you guys have any ideas, like...
Yeah, leave it in the comments below. Let us know what you guys think that NASA would need a private security force with AR-15s and hostage negotiators and SWAT teams and canine units.
Wait, they have canine units?
They have canine units. They have their own canine units as well.
I'm just imagining cute dogs in, like, astronaut outfits now and, like, a bomb disposal chihuahua and... a wise-cracking Saint Bernard. Oh yeah, in my imagining of this, they can talk.
I really just think that you just disclosed like next season of Paw Patrol. Like these are the newest characters on Paw Patrol. Bartley, the wisecracking Saint Bernard with an AR-15 that works for NASA, and Chippy, the astronaut hostage negotiator.
Okay, before we move on, and I am going to get into our actual stuff, I have to ask, have you actually watched Paw Patrol?
I have watched Paw Patrol. I do watch Paw, and it gives me unrealistic expectations of my dog. Like, I watch Paw Patrol, and I look at my dog, and I'm like, why don't you get a job? Can't even get a job as a door greeter at Walmart.
And I have not actually ever seen Paw Patrol. I'm familiar with the concept, I guess, but I've not actually ever watched it. So why? Why are you watching Paw Patrol?
Because I have nieces and nephews that watch Paw Patrol.
But you made it sound more like you keep up to date with it. Because I asked if you've seen it, and you're like, yeah, I watch it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be the cool uncle that knows about these sorts of things, okay? I'm trying to get ahead of, like, my sisters and stuff when they're buying their gifts and stuff. Like, yeah, of course I know all about Chase and Rumble and Marshall and all that.
Do you seriously know all the characters?
Yes, I know all the characters to Paw Patrol.
Okay, So he tells me there's a little more to you're just watching it for your nieces and nephews.
I'm telling you, watch it. It will give you unrealistic expectations of your dog, and as well also have a healthy distrust of humans.
Okay, before we get into the paranormal, one more suggestion. Watch The Witcher on Netflix. Seriously, guys, it's freaking great. I absolutely love it. I'm addicted, and I'm telling everybody about it.
It's like watching the game. It's like watching a very long cutscene in the Witcher game, probably.
Yeah, it's actually one of the only times I've seen them really 100% get a complex character absolutely right. Like, absolutely right. But enough gushing on that. Let's get into our topic.
Yeah, we gotta get this. So we wanted to do like an alien abduction story, something that was really cool, and I really wanted to talk about this guy that I found. His name was, and again, I'm probably getting the name wrong, Antonio Villas Boas. So his abduction story is really cool, it's really neat, and there's a lot to break down in this story. So the story goes is like on October 16th, 1975, he's like in his early 20s, and he's out in his fields in Brazil doing farm work. And he's out late at night, and he's out there at night because it's better for him to do farm work at night so that it's not too hot, and he's out there by himself. And while he's out there and he's farming, he's plowing his fields, all of a sudden he sees this bright red light in the sky. Like he saw a bright red star in the sky, and it was shining. And he keeps staring at it, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and then he realizes that it's moving. And as it's getting closer, he starts realizing that the light is actually on a spaceship. And he described it kind of like your typical UFO style thing that you think of, where it's egg shaped with a dome on top, and the dome is rotating. And it lands, and these three prongs come out. And this is when he decides to freak out. Now, when it's landing, this is the moment when finally shock is done. He's like, "Oh crap, the situation is bad. I need a GTFO." And like something straight out of Grand Theft John Deere, he jumps in his tractor and he just starts hauling it at probably a good 15 miles an hour, trying to get away on his tractor.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, his 1950s tractor, and his tractor breaks down while he's trying to get away, and it breaks down, and then he takes off on foot. And while he's running on foot, he actually gets caught by one of these beings that comes out of the spaceship. And he described him as wearing this gray coverall with this metal like helmet. And three of them pop out, and they chase him down, run him down, and they start dragging him onto the ship. And while they're dragging him, he thinks they're talking to him, or they're not, maybe to each other, they're not quite sure. But they don't talk like me and you talk. They talk like in this barking sound, like dogs, or maybe chirping or yelping sounds.
So, kind of like Paw Pals.
Maybe kind of like Paw Patrol.
Oh, Paw Patrol, sorry.
Paw Pals. And they drag him on, and it's this awful experience. He gets dragged onto the ship, and they take him to this room, and they take off all of his clothes. And they drag him into this one room, and they put him in this room, and they start taking blood from his face. Like, they hook him up with these machines, it starts taking blood samples and stuff from his face. And then they drag him to another room, and they cover him with this gel-like substance. And they throw him into this room, and he's left in this room for like 30 minutes. And while he's left in this room, all of a sudden this gas starts seeping in. I couldn't even imagine the terror that's probably going through this dude's head right now.
Oh, I'd assume I was about to die.
Yeah, like something bad's gonna happen. Like you're on this alien ship covered in alien goo, and they start pumping this gas in. Now, after they start pumping the gas in, he starts feeling like violently ill and nauseous. And after that, his demeanor seems to change, and he seems to calm down. And after he calms down while in this room, another alien comes in the room, except this one he describes her as female, very attractive, with blonde hair and these blue cat-like eyes. And let's just say they start doing a scene, I would say from a prequel to Species, maybe? I don't know.
Bumping Beautifuls.
Yes, they do one of those. After the magic's... I know we're being immature.
They did it, guys. They did it. They banged, they screwed, however you want to say it, they did it.
Yeah. And on all of its awkward weirdness, they did it. And after it's over, apparently, like, the woman alien, like, rubs her stomach and, like, points to the sky, and he's getting, like, this feeling that the whole thing was to create some sort of like interspecies thing, and and their child's gonna be raised in space. And suddenly after that, all of a sudden he's calm. Can't imagine why. And he gets a tour of the ship. And after he gets a tour of the ship, he attempts to steal some sort of clock device as evidence of what happened, he says. But he gets caught, and they just throw him off the ship.
He's just trying to steal something.
I know. He was rude and tried to steal something, and these aliens were horribly mortified by his behavior and just kicked him off the ship. And they take off, and he never sees them again. And after the encounter, he doesn't tell anybody. He doesn't tell anybody right away for what happens. But after a while, he ends up coming down with these weird symptoms. Like he starts getting like real bad headaches, and he starts developing these lesions all over his body. So he reaches out to some like ufologists and some journalists to try to tell a story, and they link him up with getting him checked out and all that, and he's diagnosed as having really bad radiation poisoning. And he never changes his story throughout his entire life. Like he lives to be like, I'm thinking, his late 50s. He goes on to be a lawyer and have his own kids, and he never changes his story his entire life.
Which seems like that would be kind of hard with having a profession like lawyer.
Yeah, I know. Like it seems really weird if you would have such a traumatic experience, you could go on to having like this kind of a prestigious profession.
Well, some people just channel things. So, there's obviously a lot to unpack here in this story. What do you want to start talking about first? Because if you don't have something, I have someplace.
Let's start where you want to start.
I want to start with the barking aliens.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but I absolutely love these guys. There's even a few drawings of them out there. I suggest looking them up. I don't have any good theories on it, but man, they have just such an interesting kind of description with these like pseudo bulbous. It's not like the sort of aliens we think about nowadays. These aren't the Greys, and they're not the Palladians, or it's not any like group of aliens I've really heard talk about in modern day. But they're kind of unique. They have these kind of weird spacesuits on. And the whole barking as communication things, it's kind of neat, but at the same time, like, there's not that much nuance in a bark. There's a reason why, full-scale languages don't sound like barking, because you need to express a huge amount of different meanings using a language. What do you think?
I think that was one of the big reasons about why I really picked this story as what we were going to talk about today, because this is just something that is just so different from other alien abduction stories that you're used to seeing is how these things look. Because I never heard of anything like you said, I've never heard of another alien that looks like this before.
Like, even the means by which they get him, it's not like they pull up, hit him with a beam of light, and fire in the skies him up to their ship. It's like they
ran him down. They run him down and drug him onto the ship.
Like, the only thing similar is, like, with most modern UFO stories, they seem to have a way to make your vehicle stop working, or maybe his tractor just gave out. I'm not really sure. But, like, they got out and just kind of drug him back to the ship.
And that part of the story is always what makes me confused as to one part of the story, because he stops becoming concerned.
Oh, I think that has something to do with that gel and gas, though.
Yeah. A lot of people think that he was given some sort of like agent to calm him down. But also, I think that one of the things that if this is true, what that had to have been was a disinfectant. Like I think,
that makes so much sense. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think that I think the gel must have been a disinfectant, or again, that's probably going to be one of the first things that you have to do, because it's one of the first things they did when they brought him to the ship. Because if think War of the Worlds or any real thing about aliens, one of the things that they have to be concerned about is like intergalactic germs,
or even like just funguses that grow on the body and things like that. And the thing is, like, there's a reason our disinfectants are in gel form. That's really good at getting in between like parts of your hands, into your pores, under your fingernails. Like, slathering them up with a gel as a purpose of disinfecting, that makes a lot of sense. And it also would make more sense for like a sedative or a relaxant to be aerosol based. Mm-hmm. Like, pillar injection would make more sense based on what we know of.
Well, they couldn't give him a pillar injection because they greased him up.
Yeah, you would have just ran off. What are you going to do? Hold him down?
Do you not remember their first story there? Your black bag tip of the episode, like he's already covered in something slippery. Like they can't.
They're coming down the hall to give him the shot, and like, oh, do you guys already grease him? Like, yeah. It's like, well, how are we supposed to give him this? Just hit him with the gas.
Yeah, their orderlies are already tired. They're like, I'm not going back in there to restrain him. It's covered in goo.
But yeah, no, that being and I really did not think about that at all, it being a disinfectant, but that makes a huge amount of sense. And then, like, okay, let's talk about the description of the lady.
Okay.
More or less humanoid with cat-like eyes. If I remember right, they were blue?
Yeah, they were blue. She has like platinum blonde hair, and she's got like her although they describe her as having like armpit hair, like her actual like body hair that you typically don't dye, and all that is red.
And a sharp chin, which I thought was very neat because not many animals have chins. Like, we have it for specific reasons. Most people think it's because, like, in the early days where we're, like, wrapping spear tips or working with leather, it's useful for if you're holding it in your teeth to pull it. And they've said, like, the remains of early man's teeth and stuff, it looked like they were pulling on, like, something with a consistency of leather. And it's just a useful tool, and they think that that's where it came from.
I thought it was like a biological trait, like, you're just like real strong, predominant chins.
No, it wouldn't be like because that's why gorillas have like huge noses, is because like having a bigger nose it would help attract females. And eventually got to the point where their nostrils are so big it's actually hindering their breathing, but they're still getting laid, so it works.
Like, might as well.
But biology is a crazy mistress. She will make you do some weird things sometimes, like have huge unusable noses. But like, I'm trying to think of what would be the advantage of having like a long, sharp chin. Like that's one of the things I've been thinking about ever since I heard the description, and I can't really think of a good reason.
Fighting. Okay. Like you're just trying to stab each other with your chins.
And it wasn't like usually long and sharp. It's just kind of it was described as being kind of feline.
I mean, it could just be a attractive trait within like for like females of their species.
And I'm gonna throw something out here, and it's probably not gonna be like everyone's favorite thing, because so much of ufology involves this story of things from other planets coming here for the purposes of breeding. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't make very much sense. Our biology is based on DNA, which is something that presumably came about on this planet. If we're going to breed with something, like we'd be more likely to successfully breed with a rose than something that evolved totally separate from us. So unless we have like a similar evolutionary path, which would also mean pretty much everything on this planet does to another planet, which maybe it is. There's crazy things out there. Maybe that is the case. I just don't really get the mechanism by which an extraterrestrial and a terrestrial-based life form would be able to produce any sort of offspring.
Like, I think the kind of beings that would be probably interested in, I don't know, breeding with a different species like that would probably not be the kind of people that you would put on a spaceship. Like, I'm just thinking about the people that interbreed with, like, animals and stuff. Or like, not, it's going to be a no check mark on your astronaut application.
And one could say, hey, they have huge advanced technology. They can travel the stars and stuff. But then why come here to do that? If they have the biological power to make DNA adhere to non-DNA to create a child, they probably have the power to just biologically engineer the child to be whatever they want. I don't know if it's that they're not aliens, or maybe they're just getting their kicks out of it, or if there's some sort of totally other thing. My thought is either we share a similar ancestry to these aliens, or there's some sort of ulterior motive to it.
Now, or
they're not aliens.
I mean, I will counter then with the, say, like the reptilian theory that they're like they're interbreeding with humans to create like these hybrids or whatever to like rule humanity. Like they're trying to like covertly or subvertly like subvert like human society that way.
But are you talking about like reptilians as being extraterrestrial creatures or terrestrial creatures?
Terrestrial creatures.
Okay, but that would make sense because they would have terrestrial DNA.
Yeah, okay then.
It probably wouldn't adhere great if they're reptiles, or DNA would probably be pretty darn different, but at least it would be like within the realm of possibility. Because life on another planet probably wouldn't even have DNA. Like DNA works because they fit together kind of like a Lego. This is going to be like sticking a Lego into a wall socket and hoping that it works. And it's not going to work. It's just, those at home do not try sticking a Lego in a wall socket. Do not do that. I was about to say.
We're not endorsing sticking things into Lego sockets here. Like, we don't condone that here at One Candle Society.
Oh, sorry about all the coughing. I've got a cold right now, and it's making me cough like crazy.
So do you believe him?
There's a lot of interesting stuff here to unpack. But I think deep down I do. He's kept his story consistent for a long period of time. He had every reason to change the story. He would benefit much more from not telling this story than he would benefit from telling it. Unless he's very wrapped up with the identity it gives him or something like that, I just don't know why he would continue to share it, because I can't imagine this helped his career being a lawyer back in like probably the 60s by the time he got his career started. I kind of feel like this probably is not something that made his life better.
I have a hard time believing that somebody who would go through such a traumatic experience like that could go on to having such a successful career like that. Like, I'm not saying that people can't have traumatic experiences and go on to do that, but that it doesn't affect his life a lot more. Like, people that would go through a very, very violent encounter like that. It's not something that I think you can just put to the side.
I don't know. Like, that makes a lot of sense in a modern perspective, but you got to remember, different eras, we respond to stressors in very different ways. Like, look at how the men and women returning from World War II responded to their experience compared to the men and women involved in Vietnam. Like, you see them adapting to their traumas in totally different ways. And responding to it in very different ways. And a lot of it has to do with, the zeitgeist of your time. Mm-hmm. So back in the 60s, maybe not.
And another thing too, like this, like you were talking about, like this guy having like a lot more to lose. Like, he really does, because this isn't just your typical farmer. This is a guy in Brazil in the late 50s. He owns a tractor. He's like upper middle class to kind of richer. I mean, they owned a huge swath of land.
Yeah, they were not a poor family.
Yeah, and you were right. They had a lot more to lose by him coming forward and telling this story.
Yeah, and if I remember right, some people were pointing out that he had sold the story to a newspaper at one point. But, I mean, I don't think he was doing that as a means to survive. I don't think that really even necessarily negates his story. If I'm telling people about this weird experience I have and I'd like to get it out and I find out, oh, hey, I can also make some money on the side if I give it to this newspaper. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably take it.
I mean, and other people too were trying to say that his story sounded similar to other stories at the time. A story similar to this that had appeared in kind of a Brazilian I don't know if it was a Brazilian magazine or just another magazine at the time. It was like, I wrote the note here, Cruzeiro, I want to say is how you say it, in November of 1957. So, like, his encounter would have occurred about a month before this comes out in November. But his story didn't actually start getting popular until, like, 1950, like, 58. Like, he didn't come forward until after this. But so they're saying, well, his story sounds similar to this, and it's similar to other people at the time in the area. But to me, that just makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it's not like they're only going to show up, like, okay... Does this sound reasonable? They cross the vast immensity of space to take this one random farmer, do their thing with him, and go, oh, we got our one. Let's go home.
Yeah, we're done,
Like, I would think they'd stick around and probably do this for a while and probably get more of a diverse sample than that one guy we saw out on the tractor.
Like, I hear this all the time when people are giving encounters in the paranormal. Oh, this story sounds like such and such that already told this story. Oh, this was something else somebody had already said. I'm like, no, this just makes it sound like there's corroborating stories. Like, that's what this is saying.
It's like, I don't think that really devalidates it. It might even somewhat validate it.
Yeah, that's like if there was a serial killer let loose in the city and someone said that they saw it and the police went, no, there's no way. These other 3 people already said they saw it too. It's too similar to that. There's absolutely no way that this could be the guy, the same guy. No, he's just copying this.
Oh man. Okay, let's talk about the radiation.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's absolutely talk about the radiation. So shortly after having this encounter, he starts developing these lesions and these headaches that he starts talking about, and I think that's one of the things that probably prompted him to reach out to some people to talk about this stuff. Like, and this isn't the first time that we've heard about this, is it?
Oh no, like you find stuff like this involved with the Flatwoods Monster and several other cases.
I mean, if you guys are really interested in studying UFO stories or like alien stories, you get much more of a education in radiation and nuclear technology than you think.
Oh man, the knowledge that I've had to learn to talk about things on this channel, like studying how sound moves in water and like the lithosphere and everything involved with that, man, you have to cross a few weird streams.
Yes. I never thought how much I would talk about nuclear politics on this channel when we started. But
God, he loves talking about nuclear politics.
I do. When this started, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I can't wait to talk about this, because this is so cool. This is something I think that actually more people don't bring up. I think is a criticism of the story. I'm not saying that the story's not true, but I'm saying this could be a criticism, because most people will go, oh, look, he got radiation poisoning from this. Obviously, he must have been exposed to some sort of bizarre radiation.
Unfortunately, there are a few explanations that could be very rational outside of that for why it occurred.
Like, the Earth itself is radioactive?
Yep. And the area of Brazil he's in is a radioactive area.
Yeah, it's, what most people don't realize is that it wasn't just like the United States, Russia, like United Kingdom, all these countries that were trying to develop nuclear technology. Tons and tons of countries in the 1950s were starting out trying to develop like nuclear energy research. They were doing this. And fun fact, guess where a lot of the uranium for the Manhattan Project came from? Brazil.
If you got that wrong, don't feel bad. I guessed Utah.
It's not the only place that it came from, but Brazil was importing uranium to the United States to help with the Manhattan Project. And by the 1950s, their president was really pushing for Brazil to start its own independent nuclear energy program. They even had, like in the 60s and 70s, a nuclear energy race with Argentina. And so, like, by the time the 1950s popped up, the late 1950s, when this story's coming out, they were trying to build their first, I want to say, the nuclear reactor in Brazil. So it is quite possible he was exposed in some way to radiation in Brazil.
And farmers do get exposed to radiation from time to time. It's something that does happen. You're like, the dust from it settles in the ground, or there's a vein close to the surface, you're out there working the dirt, you're outside, you have a higher risk of exposure.
Mm-hmm. And Brazil, not the best when it comes to safety standards. I mean, it was like in the early 1980s, they literally had a hospital that was abandoned, that they just left a radioactive medical device in there, and people stole it, tried to sell it for scrap, and tons of people got exposed to radiation.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know about this.
Yes, it did. It was in it was in 1980. It was 1987, and it was September of 1987. It's called the Goiânia accident. I can never pronounce that. To save my life.
Apologies to anyone from Brazil.
Yeah, we're not trying to mispronounce that. But essentially, what happened was there was this hospital that had a chemotherapy or like a radiation therapy device in their hospital, and this hospital was abandoned. And the government just accidentally left it in there, and nobody took it. And these dudes broke in and took it to try to sell it for scrap. And when they took it, they broke it open and released all this radiation, this radioactive material to the community. And 4 people died. Tons of people got exposed to radiation.
Why are you laughing? That's terrible.
I know. I'm sorry, but this is just to my point that it's not necessary. It wasn't really it's not the best place that had the highest safety standards for this radioactive material that they were handling at the time. Already in a time when people didn't understand nuclear technology very well, but this was just evidence that they just weren't. So it's very possible that he could have been exposed in some way, in some place in the country to radiation.
But the timing is awfully convenient.
It is, and I can't 100% say for certain that or point to any particular incidents that would cause him to be exposed by something natural like that. I can't, but it is a possibility.
Yeah, we just wanted to throw that out there.
I know.
But we do see this with other abduction reports and stuff like that, too, so...
Yeah, and other people being exposed to alien craft.
Yep. And
getting this, and this bizarre metal and stuff, getting exposed to this. Because I don't think there's any sort of gel that's going to probably protect you from radiation.
I don't know anything about gel-based anti-radiation shielding. Maybe it's great for it.
I don't either,
I do know apparently like the liquids that you drink to like protect yourself from radiation poisoning taste apparently horrible. Okay, so this is around the same time as the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Is this just before it or just after?
Just before it.
Which makes it really important because everybody points to the Betty and Barney Hill incident as being like the first like abduction.
Yeah, I think it's the first widely circulated abduction.
Yeah, it's the one that got famous.
Yeah, that really sparked this off, and this actually came before it. It was another big reason about why I wanted to do this story, and it was and why I thought it was a particularly interesting story to talk about. Does this match up to a lot of other like abduction stories like post? Like the Hill stories like that you've heard of?
Well, let's look at the similarities between the Betty and Barney Hill one. In that one, in the Betty and Barney Hill incident, if I recall correctly, they had like kind of blocked off the road and they remember getting out and heading towards there. Then they went up on the craft. There were some medical procedures focusing on genitalia that went on. And then afterwards, there was another kind of like post all that stuff going on thing where they kind of talked and chatted and shared some information and stuff. So like there are parallels to draw to it that would make them fairly similar, but also like there's a lot of things that are very different. Like the descriptions of the aliens are very different. The way they interacted were somewhat different. I would say definitely not the same sort of aliens because like in the Betty and Barney Hill case, I mean, you're looking at something that's fairly similar to, like, say, a gray.
Right.
Oh, but something that makes it uniquely different. This guy didn't have to go through any sort of hypnotic regression or anything like that to recall his story. He actually recalled it throughout his life with intense clarity.
Yeah, a lot of UFO abduction stories involve people having a lot of memory lapses and forgetting a lot of stuff.
So what do you think? Just different types of aliens?
It would have to be. I think that I find it odd that there are no other reports through the 60s or 70s or 80s or anything after that about these particular types of aliens.
That we found,
that we know of. But again, a lot of stuff from that time period, you don't hear a lot about them.
And that's true.
This is before the internet. This is before a lot of the stuff is going on in there. So it could be very localized to these particular aliens.
So what is it about Earth that makes us like the hotbed to stop over and do this sort of stuff?
We can't really leave very far from our planet.
And maybe that's it. Maybe we're kind of a vulnerable society at this point, and we're easy to kind of come and do what you need to. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe like all this stuff seems to have to do with like genetics. Maybe we have something like unique in our genetic code or something.
Maybe this is why NASA's buying assault rifles for this particular reason.
And maybe it has to do with like we're still at a point where we haven't sterilized our society and stuff. So we're exposed to more things like germs. Maybe we have stronger resistances. What? You're giving me a look.
I really hope we're not like just the intergalactic farm animal.
Well, we might be, man. We might be.
I'm really just that thought just crossed my mind. And I'm like, this is just so bad. We're just like the cows that people see on the side of the road. like I know a lot of times what like we think of just of aliens as these like just super smart, intelligent beings that have these whims, and in reality, they could just be their version of a dude driving by in a broke down pickup truck that just goes, "That looks cute." I mean, really. I mean, it just.
I'm really hoping that's not the case. I don't know. They always come in groups. It makes me think that some sort of like funded and sanctioned program. Oh god, it could be just a group of weirdos pulling around in pickup trucks, couldn't it? Oh. Why do you think, like, okay, just kind of going back to the comparison of the Betty and Barney Hill incident to this one, and then looking at it from the perspective of now. The aliens that, like, Betty and Barney Hill saw, we're still seeing something very similar to that, slightly different. Their description was a little different than the what we'd call the modern gray. Mm-hmm. But his, nothing like it. Like, did they win exclusive rights to this being their breeding ground? There's been rumors of, state making deals with them.
I mean, if you really want to think about it, think of it in terms of like Native Americans and the colonialists when they got here. Yeah. You're the Native Americans. You're not really leaving the land from where you're at, and you're dealing with one type of colonial. And then the colonials have some sort of political thing go down, some war, and then all of a sudden you're being exposed to different ones.
Like where at one point they're dealing with French and Dutch and English and a ton of other things, and then they're suddenly just dealing with English.
Yeah.
And then they're just dealing with, Americans, which are kind of like English.
Yeah.
So maybe something like that. Maybe there's some sort of space where, oh God, this doesn't bode well for us if we're, Spain when they're there ransacking it for gold. I'm just really hoping this isn't the analogy, because that story doesn't end well.
It doesn't for us. But then again, we've said it many times that if aliens were really here, it's probably not for humanity's best interest in any way.
I would say, that's probably right.
And again, more reason why NASA's buying semi-assault rifles.
What do you really think they're going to stop them with assault rifles?
I think they're going to do their best.
And I wonder if that would really work. Like, there's not a whole lot of stories about people going after aliens with assault rifles. I guess there's like the Dulcie story, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm familiar with it, but I haven't like studied it like really well.
The day I will stop panicking is the day that we have the Star Trek phaser that can vaporize somebody. Okay, then I will start feeling maybe a little bit more comfortable.
That is like the most inconsistent weapon on what it does.
I know. It either stuns you, kills you, or vaporizes you.
No, there's that one episode where they shoot someone and just his head explodes. They don't even shoot him in the head, if I remember right. I'm like, what's going on here? Was it said to decapitate?
I mean, we're already seeing like people creating their own versions of lightsabers, so we're kind of getting there.
I want a lightsaber.
I want a lightsaber too, probably for different reasons. I do. I sit at home all day long worrying about the Men in Black coming to get me, aliens coming to get me, cults coming to get me, owls coming to get me.
Oh, and he's not kidding. He's called me up a few times, worried that there's a cult like outside his house because some kid in a hoodie walked by.
I'm just saying, it was a kid. He was wearing an all black hoodie. It was pulled up. I couldn't see his face, and he may have had his friends too up there. I'm not sure.
Have you noticed like almost every community, when you dig through their folklore far enough, there's rumors about people in black hooded robes?
That's just weird.
Yeah, no, like a lot of places will have rumors of, oh, there's these weirdos out there. And when they give a description, it's always they're in black hooded robes. It makes me wonder if there's really a secret cult kind of skulking around in black hooded robes, and they're organized enough to have a specific identity.
Or people just aren't creative enough to come up with some sort of other outfit.
Maybe they all concluded black hooded robes is the way to go. But
black is slimming, it's scary, it's ominous, it's kind of, maybe, it's kind of a little bit of, respect to it by having,
I don't know, I was watching the second season of Hellier, which Hellier is something we're going to talk about in the extended portion for our Patreons.
Oh, yes.
And they're talking about, like these stories they're finding different communities about people in black hooded robes. I'm like, yeah, there are stories about that in my community too, and like there are stories about that I've heard in other places as well. And like, why is it always just black hooded robes?
I think people just like, first off, are absolutely terrified of witches, And it also probably dates back to the 80s with the mass Satanism scare across.
Yeah, I was actually
United
wondering if it has
States.
something to do with the Satanism scare, or maybe just it's a Jungian sort of archetype that's just in our head where if we imagine what the cult would be like, they're always in black hooded robes. Or there's actually a cult out there that has a unified identity involving black hooded robes.
And I think Vic is also forgetting the guy on our YouTube banner is actually a guy in a black robe.
No. That's a black duster.
Oh, okay.
Duster's good. That's what the people who hunt monsters wear. Robe. I'm not saying all cultists are bad, but if you're a bad cultist, you're bad.
Stay away from my house. Not taking any chances.
If you are a cultist out there in a black hooded robe, we would love to talk to you because we have some questions.
Via Skype, not in person. Let's set that up now.
Just show up to Marcus's house. I'm sure your
Skype.
shady connections can figure out where it is.
That's it. It's through the mail now. It's through the mail. We're doing it through snail mail. We're doing it through correspondence.
But no, seriously shoot us an email if you know what's going on here.
Okay, I'll compromise to that. Oh, I thought we were still talking about the guys in the robes. Okay.
Oh, I am.
Oh, okay. Again, I'll compromise to an email. That's fine. It's got me freaked out.
Okay. Is there anything more that we were wanting to get into on the Brazil case?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head more that I really want to talk about for that. So, yeah, I think this would be a good time probably to get into our review of Hellier.
Okay, yeah. For those of you who are just watching that are not Patreons, thank you so much for listening in.
But as always, keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening. So, Hellier. For those of you guys who aren't familiar with it, it's a documentary following a group of paranormal investigators who are investigating like the Hopkinsville Goblins and things like that, but in a different town called Hellier, which sounds really awesome. And when I first heard about this, I heard about it on Mysterious Universe with Benjamin Wright and Aaron Grundy, one of my favorite podcasts. If you don't listen to them, you should listen to them after, listening to us. But I heard about them talking about the first 3 episodes that were sent to them, and it sounded amazing. And I got very into it and started watching it. And we should talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Hellier.
And I heard about it through Vic because he goes, Marcus, you've got to watch it. You've got to watch it. You got to watch this. And
keep in mind, when I had given when I had recommended it, I had only seen the first 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm. And I started it. I'm like, whoa, this is like really cool. I started, and it follows these paranormal investigators, Greg Newkirk and Dana Matthews and their paranormal group. And they're typically ghost hunters. And that's normally what I think they had primarily done before. And now they're turned on to investigating the Hopkinsville Goblin story.
Which is a great cryptid story.
It is. We've done this. We've looked into them too. We got a video of them up on YouTube too.
And I've heard isolated reports of there being goblin-like creatures in the area.
And it gets weird. So it starts really, really cool. It starts like most documentaries do. Greg's talking about how, they're looking at a ghost. This is what they're